Hi, my name is Dr. Igor Tabrizian. I'm a qualified medical doctor with a background in integrative and preventative health. On this channel, I'll explore evidence informed approaches to optimize well being from nutrition, gut health to hormones, energy, and everything in between. Please note, this information I share is general in nature and not intended to be used as medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare professional before making any changes to your health routine. Welcome to our next podcast. This is Vitamin C Part 1. Everybody has an opinion about vitamin C, but I can tell you everything that you've read is probably the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger source of literature. So I want to expand your view and then perhaps you can reevaluate your opinion about this. Vitamin C is a builder. It helps with the immune system, energy, hormones, the antioxidant defense system, the neurotransmitters, the tissues themselves. And I thoroughly recommend this book for those who like a good non-fictional book by Stephen R. Brown called Scurvy. And this is one of the best laid texts that I have read about vitamin C, but still only scratching the surface of the whole story of vitamin C. But let's come back to the recommended daily allowances. This is where a lot of the controversy starts, I think, to say that a human can function on a dose just slightly higher than the dose that will produce scurvy. It's sort of like looking at a fuel tank and go, oh well, as long as it's not empty, it's fine. You can survive on that. But if you had a choice, would you rather not have the fuel tank full rather than take a guess? I mean, being close to the empty tank is like skirting on the edge of bankruptcy. You don't have a lot of leeway before you go under. So I come back to my previous mention of the 80 kilogram goat. See, goats can make vitamin C, so we can learn quite a lot about how much a mammal actually needs. So an 80 kilogram goat makes 13 grams of vitamin C every day. That's a lot more than 60 milligrams. And when you stress that goat can make 100 grams of vitamin C. Now, what does that tell you? What does that tell you when you port that over to a human situation? We're talking about grams, not milligrams. So one of the reasons that we need extra when we're under stress is a concept called an antioxidant defense system. And basically, this involves transporting electrons. Okay, so when you turn on a light, the flow of electricity is due to the flow of electrons. And we have a similar thing that you might want to call the bucket brigade. So, for instance, the bucket brigade is when somebody fills up one bucket and passes the water on to someone else, who then passes on to somebody else, who eventually puts out the fire. For instance, if we're talking about free radicals, one of the first buckets that puts out free radical fires is vitamin E. And then who fills up vitamin E's bucket? Well, it's vitamin C. Well, who fills up vitamin C's bucket? It's glutathione. And who fills up glutathione's bucket? Well, it's lipoic acid. So each of these steps is giving an electron to put out a fire. So every time you donate an electron or use an electron to put out a fire, you are an antioxidant. But the opposite of that is if you take an electron from somebody else, that means that you're pro-oxidant. So the antioxidant chain doesn't have absolute antioxidants in it. We have to get that from the bioflavonoids in nature. And this is why they say eat a rainbow. The compounds from nature are sacrificial antioxidants. They give up their electron to the next step without any requirement to take one from somebody else. And that's why they say eat a rainbow. Now, the next thing about oxidation state and this transfer of electrons is it's like being on the freeway. There's always somebody slower than you, and there'll always be somebody faster than you. The reason that it keeps going is that cars get on and cars get off, so it's a flow effect. And that's what's important about the antioxidant pathways. But if we're looking at antioxidants as a protective mechanism, it's like having an airbag in your car. It's not going to stop you crashing, but it'll minimize the damage when you do. So where does vitamin C comes from? Well, we cannot make vitamin C, so our default state is scurvy. Anyone tells you any different is misinformed. So we need to get vitamin C from other sources, and we have to get it from our environment. So we have certain dietary choices because of that. The thing is that some people do not absorb and transport vitamin C very well genetically. We certainly see this in general practice. And it's been known for some time, this is from 2013, the genetic variations in things like vitamin C transporters. So it's not a given that any source of vitamin C will be well absorbed if you have a set of genetics that are unhelpful. So in the terms of the sources of vitamin C, I want to show you something that you'll probably find quite shocking. That citrus is not number one on the sources of vitamin C. Black currants are, followed by red pepper, or what we call capsicum in Europe. And in fact, the first person to isolate vitamin C isolated it from paprika, and he was a Hungarian and won a Nobel Prize for it. It certainly was not anything to do with citrus. Then we have guavas, then we have orange juice, grapefruit, kohlrabi, papaya, lemon, strawberries, green peppers. And you can see as you go down here that oranges are not number one. And one of the problems I found in clinical practice is patients who are misinformed that citrus is the best source of vitamin C often have the lowest levels. Now, farming practices can really change the amount of nutrients in a particular product. We start with raw materials. We've got oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, minerals, water. Then we produce things and then we consume them. But there's quite a lot of variables when it comes to nutrient contents. For instance, studies have shown that, for instance, cabbage, it's the outer leaves that contains most of the nutrients. And the B vitamins in that cabbage are higher if it's been kept between 10 and 15 degrees. And the vitamin C level can be influenced by the level of manganese in the soil. So it's not a given that the B's and the C's in a cabbage, for instance, are going to be that dependably accurate. If you're looking at turnips are also affected by the level of boron in the soil. There's more vitamin C content the more sunlight the turnips got. B vitamins are affected by the boron level in the soil, and B vitamins are highest if you pick the turnips in the morning. So farming practices can make a huge difference to the nutritional quality of the food. One of the best cases that I first started to look at was the relationship between the salicylates and the antioxidants in the fruit. And green harvesting is when we pick fruit before it's actually ready to ripen. And the issue with that is that fruits that concentrate salicylates have higher levels prior to ripening to protect the fruit from pests. And so the salicylate levels, basically taste like an aspirin, and whoever bites into it and they go, oh, that's really bitter, it tastes like an aspirin. So it's only really in the last few days that the salicylate content drops and the antioxidant content increases to a point where that fruit can fall off and survive on the ground and protect the seed, because that's what the whole thing's about, protecting the seed for as long as possible. The transport of vitamin C across from the outside of the body to the bloodstream or from the bloodstream into the cells is determined by a series of transport systems that use either sodium or glucose, and these are where the genetic variations occur. Now, some of the labs that do DNA panels do these solute carrier genes, and you can get an idea of whether your levels are going to be low or high as a result of these things. But I mentioned before, one of the functions of vitamin C is to do with methylation and demethylation. So methylation involves zipping up an area of DNA you don't want expressed. So this might be a cancer gene or a pro-inflammatory gene, and that's where your methyl groups come into it. But when you come to demethylate, this is how you express genes. You unzip those areas, and this is where vitamin C is needed to actually express the gene. So vitamin C is part of a genomic expression system. When it comes to the functions related to the immune system, a lot of people misunderstand about vitamin C and the immune system. Basically, if a neutrophil entices a bacterium into its lounge room and wants to kill it off, it'll torch it with copper or with iron. But you have to make sure that you don't catch fire when you do that. And that's what vitamin C does. That's its function. It doesn't kill the bacterium. It just makes sure that the fight is fair in favor of the neutrophil. When it comes to other functions of vitamin C, it has a strong function as a converter of prohormones to hormones. So, for instance, the prohormone might be a brand new printer that you bought, but until you put the cartridge in, it's actually not very useful. So, the enzyme that vitamin C is famous for is called PAM, and that's short for peptidyl aminating monooxygenase. So, PAM is a bit shorter. And what it does is convert prohormones into hormones that actually function. So, for instance, ACTH, vasopressin, calcitonin, gastrin, secretin, substance P, these all need vitamin C to activate them. So that's got nothing to do with the immune system. These are hormones that are affecting the cortisol level or the sodium level or the gastric secretions. Next function is collagen. That is probably relatively well known after the immune system functions for vitamin C. So if we want to make collagen, we take some amino acids and we put them together in a strand. And then the next step is we've got make 3 strands and put them next to each other, but it's still not strong enough. So what we have to do is spot weld those strands together so you have a stronger structure. And this is what iron and copper does. But just the same as in the white cell, you have to be able to put out any fires in case that oxyacetylene in those confined spaces turns into a fire. And this is what vitamin C does in the collagen production. But we said that this is a very similar mechanism or requirement when you're using iron and copper. These intracellular minerals, we need to have some fire extinguisher to mitigate any misadventures that occur. Now, one of the things I've mentioned before about is a compound called homocysteine. And why this is important is when we're creating these cross linkages, if the level of homocysteine is high, it's like a wall to do this. And so the collagen doesn't come out as perfect or as strong. And although there might be a large voice of disbelief, there's actually studies to show exactly this. Homocysteine levels, when they're high, are a bad sign for bone density. This is from 2017. This is from my old university from 2009. We have the effect of homocysteine and, in fact, the MTHFR genotype on bone loss. And since we're talking about enzymes, antihistamine is also an important function of vitamin C. Although it doesn't bind to histamine receptors, what it does is when you want to break histamine down, you've got two pathways. You can break it down to imidazole acetate or L-methyl imidazole acetate. And the very first step can use two enzymes, one called monoamine oxidase or MAO, or another one called DAO. And DAO needs vitamin C, and vitamin C speeds up the reactions that DAO can create to break down histamine. So I hope you've enjoyed part 1. I will be back for part 2, and we will keep going with this amazing vitamin.